Welcome to Truth Be Told. I'm Tony Sweet, your host. Your other host, Captain Ron, is here with us. We are excited to have Bill Birnes on the show, best-selling author. He is a writer. He is a producer. He was one of the hosts on the History Channel Ancient Aliens. He was in UFO Hunters as leader of the investigative team of fellow ufologists and a repeat guest on the late-night show, Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. So we are excited to have him here today. We are going to talk about many of his books. Some of his topics are Birnes speculates that NASA has taken missions to the moon after Apollo 17. He claims that the Apollo 13 incident was actually an extraterrestrial attack meant to scare humans away from landing on the moon. And we have so much more to talk about with Mr. Bill Birnes. So please welcome to Truth Be Told, Bill Birnes.
Tony, This is one of those guests that I'll tell you, we could ask, there's so many topics we could talk about with Bill. It's just I don't even know where to go. I mean, there's just so many things.
Well, I'm excited.
I am too. Mr. Birnes, we're very happy to have you here. It's a great honor for us. If you don't mind, I'd love to ask you about, I just noticed right here on Amazon that The Day After Roswell that you wrote with Philip Corso looks like it was reissued or something just a couple months ago.
Yes, it was. It was reissued in June, actually in June for a July release. To celebrate the 70th anniversary of the crash at Roswell.
Tony and I went down for that.
Yeah,
we went to
there.
the Roswell for the 70th anniversary.
Right.
Very fun.
We launched the book in Roswell at the 50th anniversary. That's when the book was officially launched. Phil Corso was there. He was sick at the time. He only had one more year to live, but he wanted to make it to Roswell. He was at a number of panels. He stirred up a lot of controversy, as only Phil Corso knew how to do.
Right.
And he became a really popular guy with the community. And he died a year later in 1998. And his book has just been selling for 20 years, Day After Roswell. And finally, very early this year, late last year, we had a conversation with Simon & Schuster about do you want to do an audio version of the book? They were planning on doing that. And one of the things I said was, one of the real problems with books like this, and there is a problem, is that there is a whole stable of official contracted book readers that a lot of these companies use and have about as much emotional attachment to the story as you would to a handkerchief. I mean, when you think about this is a guy talking about the 2 years inside Army R&D, and he actually says, these are his own words, he said, for 2 incredible years I led a double life.
Wow.
And that's what the book was about. You could say it was about UFOs for sure. Yes, it was about the debris from the Roswell crash. But more importantly, it was about a double life that this one person lived. On the one level of his life, he was a lieutenant colonel in the Army. He was the deputy director of Army R&D. He was in charge of the foreign technology desk. He was working for his commanding officer. But on another level, he had in his possession debris from the crash at Roswell. And he was running really a merry chase ahead of the CIA, the intelligence services from the Navy and the Air Force, and other intelligence organizations, keeping the Army R&D ahead of the game. And, of course, leading a merry chase. He was being chased by the KGB at the same time because they wanted what he had, which was access to the Roswell debris. And how do you keep the secret? Now, think about this. How do you keep the secret of a UFO crash at Roswell, aliens, extraterrestrials coming to planet Earth? How do you keep that secret from American intelligence agencies, from the Soviet Union, from all the world's intelligence agencies, while Stalin himself in 1947 was apoplectic that we had a UFO. How do you keep that secret? And Corso, working with General Arthur Trudeau, working with the Senate, their strategy was you put it out in plain sight, but call it something else. And that's what they did.
Wow. I was going to ask you about Colonel Corso, as a matter of fact, because there's a lot of people that don't necessarily buy this book. They think Corso was either lying or whatever. And Tony and I were talking before the show. You don't get to be in that position that Corso did and still be able to be out of your mind, right? Don't you think that he got to such a high level? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was more than that. It was more than that. What led Corso to that position were three major things in his life. I mean, in his army life, three major things. One, in World War II, after he landed with General Clark at Anzio, and the whole point about that landing was the Navy never shelled the beach. So guess what happened? It was a bloodbath. They take Rome, and Corso is put in charge of the Army CIC, the Counterintelligence Corps, at Rome. He's a captain. And he's made the adjutant of Rome, the army officer who's in charge of the civil government, trying to reestablish a civil government in Rome. And he's dealing with Gestapo units that were left behind by the Germans, because they were still fighting in northern Italy. The war wasn't over. He's fighting Italian partisans, fascist partisans, who were left behind after the death of Mussolini, and he's fighting the communists. So he's got these three entities, and who does Corso link up with to help him stabilize Rome? A Lucky Luciano, who was deported from the United States. That's a whole other great story. That's a great story, but called Operation Underworld. Lucky Luciano, who sent to Sicily, where in Sicily he basically moves ahead of Patton's army to pacify all the local organized crime leaders, the capos, the organized crime leaders in these Italian villages, so they're not fighting Patton. So Patton arrives in the capital of Sicily before Montgomery, and then Luciano is set up in Sicily. He goes to Rome, and he's working with Corso in Rome, right under the nose of General Eisenhower.
Wow.
And in Rome, Corso and Luciano, together with the American organized crime leader, Meyer Lansky and Benny Siegel, there's a Jewish of Holocaust survivors, a displaced persons camp north of Rome. They free the people in the camp. Meyer Lansky gets them a freighter. This is the original story before Exodus. This is 1945. They allow these refugees, these displaced persons, to sail on this freighter, this mafia-purchased freighter, across the Mediterranean to Palestine. The British wanted to hang Corso. Ike says, okay, get out of Dodge, because you can't stay here. Off he goes to Fort Riley, Kansas. In Fort Riley, Kansas, he sees the Roswell debris coming up on its way to Fort Worth, Texas. Stops in Kansas. I mean, a cache of material. I'm sorry, it's not going to Fort Riley. It's going to Wright Field in Dayton. And he sees that material. Once he's at the Eisenhower White House in 1951, 52, he begins the negotiations under Ike's direction with the North Koreans. This is with the North Koreans in Operation Little Switch, Big Switch, where he has to acknowledge to Eisenhower that American service personnel, mainly pilots, F-86 Saberjet pilots, are being held back by the Chinese and the Soviets. They're being held back. They're never going to come home. Who's going to come home in their places? Communist agents assuming American identities. You know the television show The Americans?
Right.
This is The Americans circa 1950.
Wow.
They're going to come in. They're going to come in using American identities. And you all heard about the CIA-funded plan called Mkultra?
Right.
Of course.
Mind control?
Right.
Why were they doing mind control? What was the purpose of it? Was it to mix up the minds of American youth? No. It was to uncover the secret identities of Soviet spies who were sent in under American identities to cause sabotage and things like that. Is that true, or is that a conspiracy theory? It's true, because the real records of that are now sitting at Yale University when the KGB went out of business.
Wow.
That's what
That's pretty
Corso was
crazy.
doing.
Amazing.
That's why he negotiated that. And then when General Arthur Trudeau, who was then head of Army Intelligence, G2, went public with the fact that our own CIA, Allen Dulles' CIA, had been penetrated by the East German Stasi. It was Gehlen's spy ring. Gehlen was a Nazi, and we brought the whole Nazi spy apparatus into the United States. Big secret, right? They had been penetrated by the East German Stasi that was feeding them false information. Corso Trudeau exposed this, and the CIA wanted Trudeau kicked out of the army, sent home, goodbye, General. But Corso thought that Trudeau was a great hero. He got together all these military liaison folks at the Eisenhower White House, went to Strom Thurmond in the Senate. It's the Senate that confirms general rank on officers. So if you're a president and you want to make Joe Schmo a general, you have to go to the Senate to get approval for that. The Senate, Strom Thurmond says to Ike, no more generals until Trudeau gets his third star and is rewarded. So as a reward, they gave him his third star. Now he's lieutenant general. And they moved him over to Army R&D, which was a backwater, I'm telling you, it was a jerkwater bus stop command in the Army. What does Corso what does Trudeau discover at Army R&D? Nobody knew this existed. A plan formulated in the earlier 1950s for a fortified base on the moon. And he says, this is unbelievable. A whole army command to fortify the moon against the Soviet Union? And who does Trudeau pick to be his liaison, his second in command? Phil Corso. So when folks say Phil Corso was never where he was, bull. He was exactly where he was. No, this isn't the Prime Minister of Canada. This was, there was one of the transportation ministers of Canada.
No, I'm saying, is he related to the current?
Oh, no. Arthur Trudeau is not related to Justin Trudeau.
Okay, I was curious because you don't hear that name too
Birnes,
often.
you mentioned that that Corso was on the run and he actually had wreckage from Roswell. Would Mr. Birnes have ever had a chance to get a look at any of that?
No, I never saw any records from Roswell. I did see a piece of shrapnel. I still have it somewhere from the Battle of L.A. in 1942.
Oh. Wow, that
one
would
of
be
the
cool.
LAPD patrol officers, after the shells exploded, the anti-air shrapnel fell to the beach where it was setting roofs on fire in Redondo Beach and Long Beach, setting roofs on fire. And the LAPD the next day got up. They gathered up the shrapnel.
So I always find it fascinating that that particular event really doesn't get talked about as much as I would think it would. We talk about Roswell and, in different areas of of significance for ufology, but this actually event doesn't really get talked about that much. Why is that?
Well, first of all, it doesn't because nobody knows what happened. I mean, all you know is that something appeared at searchlight Santa Monica Bay,
right,
along the California coast heading south, and the anti-aircraft gunners fired at it, never hit it, and it just disappeared. There are all these theories. Was it a Japanese scout plane? That's a perfectly logical theory, right? Because the Japanese had already attacked Santa Barbara. They set the Santa Barbara oil fields afire, one of the petroleum facilities afire. Attacked the Aleutian Islands. They'd killed civilians. Were they going to attack L.A.? I have my own theory. One of the big mysteries to me about this was, why was it that all the shells exploded? Oh, the other theory was it was a weather balloon. That's what the Army said, that it was a weather balloon that had come loose from its tether and was drifting. Okay, I get it. But if it's a weather balloon that had probably had the worst anti-aircraft gunners that were ever commissioned, that were ever joined the Army.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I mean, we were firing shells at it all along the Santa Monica, the coast of Santa Monica Bay. Didn't hit a thing. What was it? And here's the other: if it was a Japanese warplane or a Japanese scout plane, tell me why we didn't have the interceptors up that night. Is something wrong with our own Air Force, with our own Army Air Force, or the Navy that past naval air stations? We never sent up planes to do a look-see or intercept this target? Nope. So if we couldn't hit it, if it was not a balloon, if it wasn't a UFO, if it wasn't a Japanese warplane, and if we didn't send planes up, what was it? My own theory, this was one of our planes testing the range of our own anti-aircraft gunners.
Huh. Could very well be.
That's why we never sent planes up into the air.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, they were mystery shopping. They were testing the range, and they were flying well beyond the range. They were testing how the searchlights worked, the anti-aircraft gunners worked, but it also did something else, and this is very nefarious. It sent warshivers up and down the west coast of the United States. California went on alert because residents thought in California there was an invasion underway. And if there's an invasion underway, who would help? This is the government thinking now. Who would have helped the Japanese invade? Other Japanese, right?
Right.
So that was a setup for the Japanese internment camps in World War II.
And I guess to blame it, actually, I don't know how long after that when they started bringing up the UFO sighting. I mean, because was this like immediately afterwards? Because I guess
no. This was well later.
Okay.
And of course, you're in Hollywood. You're in Hollywood.
Right.
And the big radio broadcast about this whole event took place from the big building on Hollywood and Highland.
Right.
That's where they had cameras looking out over the beach, and they were actually seeing what was going on and broadcast. You could hear the artillery shells go off from the coast all the way across to downtown Hollywood.
Yeah, I just thought maybe if it was immediately afterwards, that way, if you say a UFO, people would be just like, "Oh, these guys are crazy," and just kind of die it down.
No, they said it was a balloon.
Yeah, okay.
Here we go again with those.
Yeah, the balloon, always the balloon.
Always the balloon. Yep.
Mr. Birnes, while we have the pleasure of having you here, you have looked at so many of these cases, and I know you delve very far into the details of these cases. A lot of times we get approached by skeptics or non-believers, and I want to ask you, what do you think is the strongest evidence we have for UFOs or alien contact that we can use? Is it Roswell, or is there something that you think?
Roswell is one.
Yeah.
And even though it have come out of the woodwork like termites to debunk it, the fact is that The person who delivered, first of all, there was no cover-up in the early hours of Roswell.
Oh no, the best
because it is a fact.
Yeah, yeah.
In the early hours of Roswell, the public information officer, Walter Haut, at the 509th in Roswell, Walker Field, went to the newspapers and said that the Army captured a flying disc outside of the town of Roswell. So it was a complete disclosure. The cover-up started days later. Jesse Marcel went to Fort Worth, and General Roger Ramey of the 8th Air Force told Jesse Marcel said this himself, told Marcel, look, I need you to go in the other room for a second while I set up the debris from this that you brought on the B-29 bomber. I'm going to set it up and have you pose in front of it. When Marcel came back out of the other room, what was sitting on the floor was a weather balloon. And Marcel was made to give a nice big smile and pose in front of that debris, the weather balloon debris.
It's disgusting.
So that's how the cover-up got started. Before his death, he talked about this in around 2004, 2005. Before his death, Walter Haut was getting old. And I knew Walter Haut pretty well. We'd been to Roswell and spoken to Walter Haut. He had said over and over again, I don't know what happened at Roswell. All I know is that my commanding officer, Bill Blanchard, asked me to deliver this statement that we wrote and deliver it to the local papers. And that was the official Army captures flying disc outside of Roswell. That was that statement. And for years, almost, 50, 60 years, that's the story he stuck with. One day, there were a bunch of foreign press reporters that had gone to Roswell to interview Haut at the UFO Museum in Roswell. And Haut said, and in the discussions, Haut said, oh yeah, I was at the crash debris field. Well, Walter Haut had ever said there was that he was actually at the debris field and he saw the crashed UFO. He said it. Having said that, and he revealed the same thing. So on two separate occasions, as he was getting older, he basically revealed that this is what was happening, that I was at the debris field. Finally, two local UFO researchers in Roswell, Dennis Balthaser and Wendy Connor, approached Haut, who was on the board of the museum, and said, look, we'd like to interview you about your distinguished career in the Air Force. He was a bombardier in World War II. And he said, okay, fine. And in the discussion on videotape, they finally bombarded him with questions about, well, you were at the debris field, right? You saw the crashed UFO, right? And he admitted it on tape that he saw the crashed UFO. Then he quickly realized what he said.
Skype should be stronger.
I'm here.
There we go.
There we go. We lost you there for a second.
Skype really floats in and out.
Yeah.
So,
you keep going. Keep going.
Okay. So Walter Haut admits. Finally, Don Schmidt and Tom Carey, two UFO researchers, and Don Schmidt knew Walter Haut very well. They say, look, what will happen if we ask you a bunch of questions, answer them honestly, truthfully? Well, you've already admitted to people that you were at the crash site. Answer them in front of a notary, and then you can swear to the answers, and you can have your lawyer there. And guess what? You do not have to release these answers until after your death. Why did they say that? Because Walter Haut made a solemn pledge to his commanding officer, Bill Blanchard, that he would never reveal the truth of Roswell. And after Blanchard died in 1966, and then after he contemplated, this is a statement made in contemplation of death. It is absolutely legal gold in terms. So he answered all the questions and told this unbelievable story of not just one Roswell crash, but two Roswell crashes. Wow. One 75 miles out of Roswell, one 40 miles out of Roswell. Instead of sitting back in Fort Worth, actually comes to Roswell and puts the cover up in place at the 509th Walker Field and says, we'll cop to the one crash, we're not going to cop to the other crash. Then when Jeff he steps right to Bill Blanchard's command and trashes Jesse Marcel's whole career.
Wow.
And so that's one story. The other story is RAF Bentwaters. I mean, everybody saw this UFO, and it's Air Force officers. So there are plenty of fabulous UFO stories that convince me this is real, not a hoax.
Agreed. Bill, we're going to take a really quick break here. We have a new sponsor we're going to go to, and we'll be right back on Truth Be Told. Be right back.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to begin? Do you fear your job is in jeopardy, or is your business income reduction keeping you awake at night? We're in the best time in 25 years to make a fortune in real estate without using your money or credit. My name is Ron LeGrand, and I've taught 500,000 people to do just that and personally bought hundreds of houses myself. If you'll call 800-970-6155, 24 hours, and leave your information, I'll send you the first 500 callers my hot new CD, Foreclosure Fortunes, and my best-selling book to help you get started absolutely free. I'll show you how to build a six-figure income part-time with no previous experience and no license, even if you're a busy professional. Call 800-970-6155, 24 hours, and get my new book and CD free. That's 800-970-6155. Take your life back and make this your best year ever. Call 800-970-6155 now.
We're back on Truth Be Told. Bill Birnes is with us, and he's been fascinating in talking about Day After Roswell and UFOs. Yeah, I also agree with you, Bill, that there's plenty of credible cases that make it strong. Can I ask you this now? Let's take it a step further. What about the alien presence? Do you have a number on how many races of aliens you think are here, or after years of studying this, do you think there's a certain something taking place with extraterrestrials?
I think aliens are here. I mean, I think they've been on Earth for really, I believe it's been over 10,000 years, probably longer. I think that, on the other hand, all the extraterrestrials were not native to this planet. We were actually fabricated and constructed on this planet. Mm-hmm. And I think that there are aliens, there are ETs that are actually manipulating the way. I think that's one of the reasons for, I don't think they knew it back in 1947, but I think we now know, our governments now know, that we have been and are being manipulated by other forces. And we like fish tank, their food, happy to swim back and forth, happy to do whatever we do, but there's a world outside of our fish tank that we really can't see.
Wow. Wow. Well, because we have about 15 minutes left, and we want to talk about your latest book. This is something I've always wanted.
Is this the fishing book, Tony?
This is the one about fishing book and baking cupcakes.
He has books on so many topics. It could be anything.
Hold it up.
Yes, hold it up, please.
We got a picture of it here, too.
We have a picture, too, but I want you to hold it up anyway.
That's the battle of your last invention.
This is something I've always wanted to talk about. I'm very fascinated with Tesla, but the title of your book, Edison versus Tesla, is even juicier. So tell us about this book. Go into some details for us.
In their respective last years of their lives, Edison died in 1931. Tesla died in 1943. Edison died a multimillionaire. And so much money had gone through Tesla's hands, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, he managed to piss off more people with money. George Westinghouse, J.P. Morgan. I mean, this guy was amazing. But after World War I, both inventors had an idea for their dramatic final invention, and they were fighting each other over who would invent it first. And that was an invention of a device to talk to. Fascinating thing about that device, their respective versions of those devices, which we can get into, is that today scientists are actually, they've been proven correct. Theories have been proven experimentally to be correct. Edison's theory was this. At the time that Edison was formulating his theory for a spirit phone, governed what you can see. Okay, that was their theory, that what you can't see is governing what you can see. And that was the theory of quantum physics. And they believed that bits of quanta were entangled with each other. It's called spooky action distance, so that if one bit of matter was spinning and another piece of matter would spin in an identical way. Edison said that means that if human beings are composed of electron bits, they would stay together after the body died. And if I had a device that could ping those unseeable units, those small units, if I had a device that could ping them, I'll bet you that I can communicate with the dead. That was his theory.
That is fascinating. I mean, that is so fascinating because
here's how we did it.
Okay,
here's how we did it. He said that, remember Star Trek, a photon torpedoes?
Yeah, of course.
Well, photons were so small they could connect. If there were a cohesion of electrons present, if they could be summoned, the spirit of the dead, photons could ping it, and if the photon pinged it, and if the light, that narrow pencil beam of light, were focused on a photoelectric cell, if something crossed that light beam, it would register on a meter. That was Edison's theory.
What I find fascinating is the quantum. I was not really that familiar with it until we started doing the show. But I've learned so much from just the quantum that this is where I think that we need to focus on the most. Don't you think this is what our future is anyway? I mean,
absolutely, because quantum computers that are being developed here in the United States and also in China will be the fastest method of communication. Think about it. Think about this. To blow your mind.
I'm ready.
Please do that.
If there is spooky action at a distance over space, and if Einstein is correct and space-time is the same thing, why couldn't there be spooky action at a distance across time?
Wow.
And if there is spooky action at a distance across time, instead of events in the past influencing the present, why couldn't events,
in the future,
if Heisenberg's theory of uncertainty is correct, that decisions you make now influence what you will see? In other words, it's the uncertainty theory. I don't know if that's going to be a wave and not a particle. If that's the case, decisions you've already made in the future are now influencing the past. That's what spooky action at a distance may mean. And right now, physicists around the world are exploring that theory. That, in the 1920s, was part of Edison's theory.
That's fascinating. I got to be honest. I love that.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
and here's Tesla's theory. Tesla said that sound waves, that radio waves, are eternal. Eternal. Now, that's already been experimentally proven. When there was a collision of two black holes 1.3 billion years ago, Einstein's theory was...
So could you say Einstein's theory one more time? You cut out
sure,
right at the beginning.
Einstein's theory was that if black holes were to collide, waves from that collision, like waves on an ocean, would travel all the way across the universe and theoretically could be picked up by a very sensitive device. Well, that's exactly what happened last year. Years ago, gravity waves from that collision passed through our planet, and changed ever so slightly the shape of our planet, and that was picked up on devices in South America.
Jeez. Wow.
It's amazing that we know that.
Right.
That we can measure that.
Both inventors were correct, and their predictions were borne out by experiments, by real-world experiments.
And so, I mean, as we can see, it's their theories and their technology, what they put together, has actually affected us today, and in our future. Is there any other, I guess, inventions coming up that you see, or theories that are going to blow our mind? That, I mean, because if you think about that, Tesla and Edison, their thought was so far in advance. What are we thinking now that are so far in advance that we would never could even recognize that in another 50 years?
If photons, let me just do one thing. I think I found a reason this thing might be cutting out. Now,
right at the end. Great, Bill.
Isn't that great? Wait until the end and then fix it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
There you go. So think about this for a second. And be afraid, be very afraid.
I'm ready.
Both inventors saw that there would be one of the things Tesla invented was radio-controlled weapons.
Oh.
He gave a demonstration about this in Madison Square Garden. Edison was on versions of radio-controlled devices. These are robotic devices. Remember what happened when there was a mass shooter, a shooting at police in Dallas last year?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
They didn't shoot him. What did they do?
Sound blast.
They dispatched a robot.
Yep.
Oh, that's right.
Carrying a bomb, which detonated where this person was killed. In other words, RoboCop.
Right. Right.
That's what that was. RoboCop. We are developing weapons now, like the F-35, that are based on artificial intelligence, robot. Do you want to be the person misidentifying? Here's what police forces are doing around the country. They're using artificial. Remember the movie Minority Report?
Right.
Based on predictions from psychics.
Right.
Well, what if the predictions artificially intelligent computer based on crime records making foreseeable predictions about people who would commit future crimes? And some computer in Yugoslavia or in the Czech Republic or in Montenegro or someplace, Harry the hacker breaks into your Equifax file.
Mm-hmm.
You have no knowledge of that. And basically manipulates various. You're walking down the street when suddenly a SWAT team surrounds you, points guns at you, and says you're under arrest for blank, 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 blank. I didn't do it, Your Honor. The computer said you did.
Right. Which is
That's
scary.
the future.
That is scary. Yeah, we only have about 3 minutes left. I know real quick. Didn't they use something in Cuba just recently, like a sound,
a sonic weapon
that
at a high enough frequency
that
it actually caused brain damage.
Yeah,
it's scary to think about.
That is scary. I mean, I couldn't imagine just a sound weapon that could do that. All right,
Bill's going to get us dialed in right now. It's going to be working perfectly.
There we go. There we go. So.
Okay.
So you were just saying the sound weapon and it caused brain damage, but I think he cut out again.
First person to that was a directed energy beam, and who was the first person to do that? Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, Bill, we're going to have you back because you have so many books that especially with the Halloween coming up, and there's a lot of books that you have written about haunted places and.
Next year in January.
Right.
In January. The book I have coming out in January is UFOs in the Oval Office.
Ooh.
What did our presidents know, and when did they know it?
Then you're definitely
awesome.
coming back.
Let's do it for January. That
yeah,
sounds great.
Let's do that. Well, sir, we appreciate you. Unfortunately, because of the technical issues, but what we've heard, you're just a legend, and we are honored to have you on the show.
Very much.
And we definitely want to have you back. And everybody, go out and pick up the book. I'm gonna show the book. It is called What is it called? There it is. Edison
versus Tesla.
The battle over
their last invention.
Love it.
That sounds so fascinating.
Yeah, I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to read it just because not only it's you that those two have changed our world. So, well, we're going to send people to your website, william.birnes.com. That's BIRNES.com, and go to Amazon. But I'm sure you want to send them to your website.
They can buy it on Amazon, buy it in Barnes & Noble, buy it in a bookstore, buy it from my website.
And this is a legend. This is a legend and a hero from people like ourselves, Captain Ron and myself. So until next time, you're listening to Truth Be Told right here on UBN Radio. Bye-bye.
Thank you.